Hi everyone. Hey, we are just getting ready to start with our guest Sarah from Spartan FX. We are really excited to be talking about currency exchange. That's definitely a phrase you wouldn't have heard me say like 6 years ago, but now that I live in Portugal and we do what we do, this is a topic of conversation. So welcome to our Q&A today. We're going to take questions. Thanks for introducing yourself and letting us know where you're coming in from. So we're just going to give people a couple of minutes to get signed in and get set up. We really welcome your questions. So we're really focusing on currency exchange on this conversation. But if you really have some questions that you want to have us notice, just drop them in the chat and we will jump right on it. So we're excited about this today. There's a lot of questions about how to manage the currency exchange piece of the puzzle when you're moving abroad. So if you're moving to Portugal or if you're considering moving really anywhere in Europe, Spartan and their services can support you. So today, if you're even trying to decide between Portugal and another country, for example, this conversation is still really relevant because you will definitely have currency exchange in the conversation. Hi, Jessica. Welcome from California. I see folks from Florida. Hey, Don. Good to have you on here. Wanda, welcome from Albuquerque. So we have people coming in from all over the US, from Pennsylvania. Hi, Chris. And Pedro, hi. Hey, it's good to have you on here from New Jersey. Terrence coming in from Minnesota. We're getting a good cross section. Julie, hey, from Washington State. So Judy here as well from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania and Boise, Idaho. So we are really catching the states here today, Sarah. So that's great. So it is the top of the hour. It's 6 o'clock. So I would like to formally kick it off. Sarah with Spartan FX is here today. We've known each other now for a little while, a couple of years. We've been working together with Spartan FX from Portugal, the place. They are our exclusive currency exchange partner. They're the folks that we recommend to everyone that is working through the process of relocating to Portugal and need to get their money moved here. And Sarah, would you share a little bit about yourself and kind of jump in and give some background before we start getting into the conversation?
Yes, absolutely. If there's any problems with my Wi-Fi, do let me know if you can't hear. For some reason, of course, today of all days, there may be some delays there. I work for Spartan FX. I've been working for them for nearly 5 years now, but I've been in the foreign exchange industry for nearly 17 years. I live in Portugal, just outside of Lisbon, between Lisbon and and actually I was saying to Colleen that next month is my 1-year anniversary.
That's fantastic. Now, Sarah, we are getting some breaks on your Wi-Fi. There seems to be some delays happening again. So we will go ahead and if you need to do anything or reset, let me know because we're kind of losing you. Are you able to hear us?
I can. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, but your video is delayed.
Okay, well, as long as you can hear me, that's the main thing. And if there's a problem, let me know if you can't hear me, and I'll see if I can change that.
Okay, no problem. Well, one of the things we wanted to cover today is the process of moving your money. Primarily, we're going to talk today about the US dollar and the United States, as the majority of our clients that we're working with are looking at the exchange from the US dollar to the euro and what that entails. And many of the folks we work with, this would be the first time they would do any significant kind of financial transaction or currency exchange internationally. So, you know, Sarah, are there like the things that you really want to touch on from the beginning about currency exchange that folks should know, something that you'd like to share just to kind of get us kicked off?
Absolutely. So obviously it's very topical at the moment. I know that obviously if you're moving to Portugal, you know, you are looking at the exchange rate anyway. So it is something that's very important to be watching and to be factoring into your move to Portugal. But obviously at the moment we are seeing a lot of volatility, and it is important to be looking at the exchange rates to really try and budget, or it really can affect the cost of your euros and the cost of your move to Portugal. We've seen many clients over the last few years. We've seen a number of different things that have moved the market, whether it be pandemics, war, and now obviously we've got trade wars and inflation and interest rate announcements. So there's a lot to consider when we're looking at the exchange rate, but the bottom line is going to cost you. So just to give an example, in the last month, we've probably seen about 4 to 5% move in the euro US dollar. And if you're buying 500,000 euros, that's nearly a difference of 50,000 US dollars. So it can make such a big difference. We're talking the difference, the budget on buying property. We have clients that are looking at sort of buying a property, buying a car. So it really can make a difference.
Absolutely. Sarah, I think what we need to do is have you maybe turn your video off. It is really coming in choppy, Sarah. So if we could maybe try to go without video and see if that stabilizes. Sorry about that. Let's see. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yes, okay. I can hear you.
Okay. So one of the things we learned when we came in and we were moving money is we were really unaware of where the hidden fees are and things you need to look for. When I first moved to Portugal, we did a transfer. I was with Chase Bank in the United States, Chase Sapphire, and went in and I was like, I'd like to do an international transfer to my bank account in Portugal. And do you have any fees? And they're like, no, we don't have any fees. And I was like, great. Never even thought to ask about the commission rate that they would put on that exchange. And let's just say that it was substantially more than what the published currency exchange was for that time of when I moved. How does that work? Can you give a little explanation of what's happening and why it's important to understand all the different areas you might get charged?
Yeah, absolutely. We hear that as well. Clients will say, as you said, they'll do it for free. I mean, the reality is nobody will do anything for free, and certainly not your bank. So yes, there may not be, a transfer fee, but as you rightly said, it's still within the exchange rate. So between what we buy and what we sell, I mean, the best way I really describe it is that essentially there's like a wholesale price for foreign exchange, like you would for most goods or services. There's a wholesale price that the financial institutions, banks, themselves are buying at, and then sell it on at a different price to the consumer. And that's where we make our money. That's where the banks, that's where everybody else makes their money, essentially. So it will be in the exchange rate. That's where you will see the difference. And it varies. I mean, we've seen, Bank of America, I think they charge about 5 to 6%. Probably that Charles Schwab is probably the most competitive, I would say, but we're still able to offer a better price than they can offer. So it's still worthwhile looking at the exchange rate. And the other thing as well is that if you are pricing, comparing, certainly, it really needs to be done at the same time, because exchange rates can and do move all the time. So, if a client says to me, oh, can I compare your price? I got this yesterday from my bank. I got it last week from my bank. It's out of date. The exchange rates have moved. And, the price that, say, I would quote you, it may sound worse, but the rates could have moved. So again, it's all about comparing really like for like, essentially.
Right. And Jen has a question here from San Francisco. She's interested in learning about the best possible interest rates for long-term savings in Portugal. And, Jen, that's a really interesting question, because that would really be, what would those euros earn for you once you've converted that currency from the US dollar to the euro, and then where would you place it, for example, and how does it work for you? Just as in the United States, there's different options for interest-bearing accounts, investments. There's a variety of options. There really isn't a one-stop shop for the best long-term savings. That would really depend on a variety of factors: how much money you have, how long you want to have it in a savings without being able to access it. But one of the things that you want to take into account, again, is if you're shifting money out of investments accounts, if you're moving money, you will have to put in the element of the currency exchange. So if you have 100,000 dollars? What does that look like in euros? And then where can you place it based on what you want that money to do for you? So Jen's asking for some strategies for dealing with the falling dollar. I know this is top of mind for everyone. So Sarah, we're hoping you have the magic answer for what we can do to minimize our impact by what's happening within the currency exchange right now.
Absolutely. I mean, it is very difficult to forecast. Usually, as I said, what the market and experts are looking at is usually historic trends. We look at inflation data. We look at the sentiment coming out. Is that, for example, the ECB will probably potentially cut rates in June. It's things like that that the market can then forecast in. The challenge at the moment is there's so much changing on a regular basis, a daily basis. Like, for example, as we've seen the trade wars that tariffs are put on, then they're paused. How are other countries sort of fighting back? Or so it's very difficult for the markets really to forecast. And also, this US dollar is normally seen as a safe haven currency, safe haven value of that, and pulling out of it as well. So yeah, it is difficult times. There's a couple of different options you can do. One is that we can just help you monitor the rate of exchange. You can sort of we can look at putting in certain markers in the market around looking for a better rate, or this is my budget level. I can't let the rate go below this certain amount, because then it suddenly becomes a bit more too expensive for me. So there's things like that we can do. Some clients, they buy all of their euros in advance. They buy a quarter or a half of what they need. So at least then over time, the risk is lower and you're buying, at a better rate, maybe over an average. The other thing that you can do as well, which talking about sort of having money in higher interest earning accounts, the other thing that you can do is you can lock a rate in now for a future payment, but we would only need 10% deposit to lock into that rate. You pay us a 10% deposit, we lock the rate, and then you pay the remaining 90% when you need it.
So let me ask you, Sarah, to expand on that, because I think Jen here has a question about holding euros, which is another thing a lot of folks are doing, is they're scrambling to move their dollars into euros right now because they're hedging that it's going to get worse instead of better. Talk us through a little bit about how Spartan works when we're talking about moving and holding and deposits and everything. It's an account, right? It's a similar to having an investment account or a bank account. You have your money somewhere. Can you kind of expand on how that works through the Spartan process and what that makes sense, with what Jen's saying, for example?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So our accounts are very similar to a bank account. They're in your name. We can hold euros for you free of charge. It isn't an interest account. So if you, again, with the question before, if you're looking at high interest earning accounts, that's a different type of account, and that's not what we have. We are just allowing you to buy those euros and hold those euros, especially if you don't have a bank account open yet in Portugal or somewhere to actually deposit the euros. So the account, you can hold the money for as long as you want. And then we can transfer it on to wherever you need. The accounts are protected as well. So it means that all of your money is protected, and should anything happen to us as a company, you'd get all your money back. So that's where it's slightly different, the accounts, the way that they're set up. I think usually it's so the accounts are only protected up to about 85 or 100,000. This is all of your money's protected. So if you did need us to hold all your euros, we can. Until you have a destination for that, whether it be your own account in Portugal, a lawyer, you're paying for a property, you're paying a seller, wherever it needs to go, we can send that money on.
And the situation that you're holding, like you said, you hold the euros there. And I think I saw a question that was just coming through about what's the difference, what do you provide, and what's the difference between Wise and Spartan. And one of the things, Dawn, I'd like to share, just because it's like Sarah, of course, loves Spartan FX because she's with them. But the reason we've chosen to partner with Spartan FX for these large transactions is from what's happened when I've had folks use Wise for transactions. And it's my own experience with clients. You can do transfers, but what you have with Spartan FX are real people that work with you as an account manager from the beginning to the end. Not only do they have great rates. They're very easy to reach. They have all of the services you need. But if something were to go wrong, we have a person to work with to try to figure it out. The couple of times I've had clients transfer large down payments using Wise, they have had some hiccups. One of them had their money kind of just go into the atmosphere for 30 days and they lost the property they were looking for because Wise didn't have anyone we could reach to help us find a solution. So maybe, Sarah, I'll let you jump in on that, but that's our reason is it isn't just what they do when everything is great. It's also having human beings involved if something goes wrong.
Yes, I mean, obviously not to sort of be negative that things could go wrong, but you're right, absolutely right. That's that's the reality, that if there is something, we're there to support you. And where we've seen issues with clients that have come to us that have tried to use Wise or another online provider, they're the sort of challenges they encounter. That, for example, they have opened an account with Wise, it's very easy, very quick. They've exchanged their money, it's a large sum, it's for a property purchase, and then they request the compliance documents and they hold the money before they get the documents. They're basically saying to you, we won't send your money. And again, a lot of people leave this to the last minute. So I think if anything as a takeaway is that do not leave it to the last minute, give yourself more time. And that's not just for the exchange rate, that's just for the banking processes. In case there's any issues or anything, you're not going to be stressed about getting that payment there on time.
Absolutely.
And then what's happened with clients, they're trying to provide documents, not being able to, and they've had their accounts closed, or as you said, the delay's been a bit longer. Some of the online providers, they do the sort of, we'll get back to you in 5 working days sort of policy. Again, you know, you're on a time limit, especially if you're paying for a property. And what we like to do, which is the other side of the service, is yes, we focus on looking at exchange rates, trying to get you the best rate that we can within your time frame, but it's actually the process of the moving the money. So we collect compliance up front, so that if the beneficiary bank in Portugal or wherever flag the payment, we're there with the documentation, what needs to be sent, so that they release the money. Because usually what happens is the beneficiary bank will speak to the bank that sent the money. Now, that if that's a Wise or if that's your own account, that can be quite slow, that conversation. And again, that can cause delays. The other thing as well is that we always ring the beneficiary and we check the details, because sometimes, unfortunately, there's human error or there's fraud with emails. And if you're putting in an IBAN yourself and it's been intercepted by some fraud, unfortunately, as long as it's a valid IBAN, that money will go. So again, it's always worthwhile checking, maybe do a small test if you've not sent money there before.
What you guys just did with one of our clients doing a large transfer. You made sure that the IBANs were valid and it was the seller's accounts by doing a small €100 test transfer before any funds were moved over in a large quantity. I think that extra step, that extra care to make sure that we're doing everything we can to mitigate any kind of loss, I think really does set you apart.
I think the thing is that we all the clients, yourself, you're very intelligent people, and these things that you're sat thinking, oh yes, I would do that, I would know that. But I know myself, moving country, there's a lot to consider, a lot of elements that you need to do, and it can be a very stressful time that sometimes things get forgotten or overlooked, and you might not think to do that small test, or you're doing something quickly. Again, it's just having that support.
Yeah, so those points are really important, Sarah, and I'm sorry, we are still getting a little bit of a delay with your audio, but those are really important points and so necessary to consider. When you're in a hurry or someone's putting pressure on you, if you skip a step, it can be very difficult to fix that later. So having folks that have done this time and time again to guide you through it can really save you a lot of anxiety later. Sandy has a question here about Roth accounts that are not tax-free in Portugal. can you address? So first off, neither Sarah or I are tax advisors. In this call, we are strictly focusing on currency exchange, but I can let you know that there are dividends from accounts and income from accounts that are not tax-free, but also Roth accounts in the United States. Some of them require you to be a resident of the United States. So you need to check with your American investment advisor to look at your portfolio, look at your Roth accounts, and see what are requirements for residency, and then prepare to adjust accordingly. So it isn't just taxing of income coming off of some of these things. It's also important to make sure you are compliant, because if you are not able to have that particular Roth, you will have to change your investments and shift to what's compliant to avoid tax penalties. But in this case, Sarah and I are talking around currency exchange and protecting your money as you're moving through that process. And without being tax advisors, we do have tax partners that can help you with those questions for sure. So Otis,
the other thing as well is, obviously, with your permission, we can work very closely with you and your tax advisor, or Colleen, looking at your buyer's agent, because again, by putting us all sort of together, working together, sometimes that can help.
Absolutely.
The process of not just.
And that's one of the things that we've been doing really closely with Spartan FX, is that we are there during the purchase process, during the rent transfer process. So we're on the same time zone. They're in London, we're in Portugal. And so we're able to actually coordinate oftentimes and help get answers on documentation or addresses and things before our folks have even woke up on, the time zones in the US. So that's an absolute. And Sarah, I'm so sorry that you're having technical issues. Everything just kind of broke up there. So I hope I didn't feel like I cut you off. I'm trying to kind of anticipate what's going on with the technical. Fiona, there was another question.
I'm so sorry. Normally I don't have any issues, but it's always the case, isn't it? When you need it on that.
So Otis has a question here about the Spartan FX save over a wire transfer of 100K. Is that an average? Is that something that is always the same, or does that vary? Sarah?
I'm thinking about the question. Sorry, I don't quite fully understand. How much do we save against?
So I think what the question is Otis is asking is, would you save money over a wise transfer? Because I think he meant a wise transfer, not a wire transfer. I'm guessing maybe, Otis, or are you looking for a comparable, Otis, between Spartan FX and a wise transfer of 100K?
Yeah, the answer is yes. We would say.
Otis is asking about a direct wire transfer from a bank to a seller or something on 100K.
Yes, we would save money against the wire transfer with your bank. As I said, it's in the exchange rate. We give a more competitive price than your bank. That's the thing. We have a lot of experience with a lot of different banks in America, so we generally kind of know a lot of times the spreads or what they're charging, and we know that we can offer a better price. The other thing as well that we like to sort of give tips on is that thinking about, just going back to the process with your bank. Sometimes clients will come here, they're on a scouting trip, they're looking at maybe buying property, or maybe you've moved, you're renting, and now you're considering buying or moving more larger sums of money. And the one thing to sort of do a bit of research, and the things that's worth bearing in mind, is that some banks in America have limits on how much you can transfer. So we've seen it where a client was going to buy a property, they were here now in Portugal, and their bank had a limit. They could only move $70,000 every 30 days. Or the bank says, we need you in branch to fill in this form because we need a more authorization because it's the largest sum of money. So it's sort of putting those processes in place. What does your bank need?
Right.
Can you sign the form, give people power of attorney, whatever that looks like? who do you bank with? Can you change banks to a different bank? It's things like that obviously that's easy to do when you're actually in America.
Right. Because with Spartan, what it is what I think sometimes people miss is the fact that when you're doing a transfer, you can transfer dollar to dollar. So it's not an international currency exchange right away. Can you kind of talk about that first step? So if you were doing a wire transfer from your bank account of 100,000 in the United States, you would transfer it in dollars first to the Spartan account, correct?
Yes, and that will be quicker. If your bank did the conversion, it would be slower because they take longer to process that for you. So it would be quicker US dollars to US dollars.
And it would cost more too, correct?
Yes, and it would cost more. As we said, it isn't a case of just the transfer fee if they have one. It's actually the exchange rate. That's where you'll see the difference with your bank.
So Terry's asking now about the question that I was posing because I wasn't sure if he was asking about Wise or Wire. What is the financial or cost difference between a Wise transfer and a Spartan FX transfer on an average? We're not holding you to it, Sarah, because I know everything changes. But is there an advantage financially with Wise, or is it pretty competitive? Both? Is it more customer service?
It's a bit of both. So we can still be competitive against Wise, but also you're getting the customer service. I mean, overall, I would say that the thing for us is that as a company, the way that it's set up is that we're able to be a little bit leaner in our processes, which means that we can pass that saving on to our clients and also still be able to give you a high level of service, very much similar to how I compare it to using your financial advisor. It's very similar. Use them to get advice. With us, it's not advice because of the way that we're regulated, but it's guidance on the exchange rate. And it's still, as we said, it is the strategies around really managing your money when it comes to foreign exchange.
Absolutely. And I think that one of the things that is just so important when you are moving abroad, and a lot of times it's the first time you've dealt with these kinds of situations, is having experienced, trusted people in your corner, a team, so to speak, that's keeping track of everything, all the different things they're experts in. So, it's something I never thought in a million years that I would have a currency exchange partner and account, because it never crossed my mind to even think about it as something necessary until this kind of, major change in my life and moving abroad. And so I feel for a lot of folks, the ease of an app download is kind of like, oh, look, this is convenient. But having someone in your corner when you're making substantial financial decisions is pretty hard to put a price on.
I think the thing as well is that, with that, you're just comparing the rate on the day. So, for example, today, but actually, if you bought your euros, as we said, just over a month ago, it would be cheaper. So again, that's really where we save our clients more money, is not necessarily, yes, there is a saving to be had on the rate on the day against a bank or a Wise, but actually, this is when I'm talking about this exchange rate sort of management side of things. That's the sort of guidance and the help that you're not going to get through a Wise. And that's where sometimes we can save clients more money. And as we said, protect your budget and give you a better understanding of how much the move to Portugal is gonna cost you. And then, as I said, it is the process and that sort of helping give the tips that who do you bank with, how does that work?
Yeah, exactly. I don't think a lot of people realize how many compliance documents are involved and how many steps, especially as Americans, our banks require a lot of reporting. There's a variety of documents that have to happen. It looks straightforward when you type in a number and then send an amount, but there's so much happening in the back of these transactions to be compliant.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is as well, you have to, we don't report to anyone as far as the FBAR is concerned, but we can help you. We've got clients that regularly email and ask us certain questions, and we send all the information that you need for that. So again, we're sort of working with you to help wherever we can with sort of what needs to be done when you're talking about moving money internationally.
It's a lot. So Terrence is asking about your experience with Charles Schwab transfers, investment accounts, Charles Schwab. Do you have a fair amount of clients that you're working with those type of transfers?
Yes, Charles Schwab is probably one of our favourite banks to work with, actually. So they're quite good for us transferring the money. Again, there's still a saving to be had against us and Charles Schwab. What they get the client transfers, and again, we've helped clients fill that form in so that when they make the transfer.
Sarah, could you repeat that? You broke up right when you started to say what you do with Charles Schwab.
Yeah, so with Charles Schwab, there's still a saving to be had between us and them in as far as the exchange rates. They are one of the better banks that we work with clients. They do ask you to fill in like an international transfer form when you make international transfers, and we help clients fill in that form.
And what about third party? Some of the investment firms, there's different ones in the States, Fidelity, there's Charles Schwab, Edward Jones. There's just a variety of these investment firms that people are moving money out of. Some of them use a third party bank, for example, Wells Fargo, to do the international transfer. Have you encountered that with folks that are asking those questions?
Yes, so some sort of brokerage accounts won't make international payments, so the money will need to be moved into their checking account. But again, the foreign exchange at Wells Fargo, again, there's still going to be, what's the cost of that? And that's where it's still going to be more expensive for you.
So sorry, you broke up again pretty heavily. So I know it's so strange. I've never had this happen before, so I'm not quite sure what's.
No, me neither.
But if you could just say, so you've worked where there's been a third party. It is another hidden fee sometimes that folks are not aware of. In my experience, they think they're just going to move money from their investment account. They're going to cash in some stock or whatever, and then just transfer it. But there's actually another facilitator, I guess, for lack of a better term, in between. And that's something to be aware and ask those questions, in my opinion, before you start something so that you understand where all of the different transactions are going to happen.
Yes. So some brokerage accounts like that won't make international payments. So the money needs to be moved into your checking account. But you are better to have it still in US dollars, as you said. And because, again, who's making that exchange? If it's your bank, they're still not often offering you the best price.
Right. And then another note, at least if you have a credit union in the United States or a small regional bank, that can be quite difficult to make an international transfer. Some really have some challenges. They're not capable of doing it, or there are a lot of issues around it. Have you encountered that?
Yes. So again, as I said, it's that understanding of where you've got your money and what the process is going to be like. Because again, sometimes clients are not ready to do that right now. They move to Portugal and then they encounter problems. So again, it's worthwhile, just having a free call with us. I mean, even at this stage, if you're not ready to exchange any money, it's just so that we can understand where is your money, where is it being held, a bank or brokerage account or whatever. And then we can kind of understand that, is it best to move it? How does that look? What processes do they have in place that you'll need to do to move your money out in the future?
So we have a question about that 10% deposit lock on the rate. We have the question here. Could you expand on that? That's really interesting, what you were saying earlier.
Yes. So it's essentially that what you put in the chat there. So today's rate, we can fix it today for a future payment. Okay. We only need 10% of the amount that you need to buy. We fix it today. And then say it was a property purchase and it was, I don't know, 6, 8, 12 weeks time, or say it was 12 months time, you need the money, you pay us the remaining 90%, and the rate was locked today. Now, if the rate goes down,
Yeah, exactly. If the rate goes
Yeah.
down, what happens?
Yeah. So the thing is, if the rate goes down and it gets worse, then you are in a great position because you have locked. If the rate improves, yes, you are still locked into that price. So
Okay.
the way to sort of look at it is that either you're locking into a favorable rate or you're locking into a rate before it gets worse. You're controlling the budget. So again, it's quite, a lot of people tend to do it for property purchases because it's different from buying in your home country where you know exactly how much it's going to cost you in US dollars.
Right.
When you're buying, the rate could change when completion comes. So again, it's giving you that peace of mind that your budget's protected and you know exactly how much the property is going to cost you. Obviously, we have very volatile times at the moment, and that may be a way of protecting the rate. As I said, obviously, if it goes up, you are locked. So it's kind of understanding your situation, what money you've got available. I've seen it where clients have done that and they fix the rate because they're at the top of their budget to buy that property. And even though, yes, it could go up, they can't afford for it to go down.
So Rebecca is asking about the regular deposits to Spartan from FX from the US, for example, from retirement accounts. If you could really expand on that, we've talked a lot about large transfers for like purchases, one-time transfers, but we have a lot of folks here that are moving smaller sums of money over from the US on a regular basis. Could you share how that would work?
Yep. I mean, you can there is no minimum with us, so you can send smaller amounts into us. Again, it depends on your need for the money, whether then you have to have it done and converted every month, that we watch now for a better rate. We can fix the rate up to 12 months. So you could fix a rate for the total amount of your regular payments over the next 12 months and then draw down every time that you need a payment out. And again, that's a way of maybe controlling cost a little bit, which we can only do it for 12 months, but it's still something to consider.
That's great to know, Sarah. So if somebody is on a more of a fixed income and they are considering very carefully the volatility of the market and trying to decide how they're going to plan for the next year, especially that first year when you move to Portugal, like you move to Portugal, you're coming in, there's a lot of variables still. What you're saying is that let's say that you move $5,000 a month from your savings, or you've got it in pensions or whatever. It could come to Spartan and you could do a fixed rate to make sure you knew that you were always going to get 4,500 euros every month. So you could budget accordingly. Is that something similar to what you're explaining?
Yes, you could do that. Yeah, just to try and help with the budget there.
So if you're not
and
a gambler,
as I said, it depends on, again.
Yes.
Yeah, it depends on your situation.
Yeah, for some people, the variable,
your personality.
Yeah, I mean, for some people, the variable is just like, okay, that's what I'm dealing with. But for others, it can be really intimidating to not know every month exactly how much money you're going to have based on the exchange rate. Let me just ask you another question here as we're moving through this, and this is really an interest on general. So when this tariff situation started, when everything really hit the fan, so to speak, in the last 2 weeks or 10 days, I don't know, I lose track of time. Do you feel like in your world, in your sphere of currency exchange and your financial background, was everyone caught really by surprise? Do you feel like you were prepared for this? How did it impact just from your side of things, and how was the response? Were you getting a lot of panic? Were you getting a lot of feelings that write it out? There's a lot of curiosity about that.
Well, we have clients that have already bought euros before. Like I said, they buy a quarter, a half, or all of what they need. There's certain types of clients that we've given guidance and they've decided to buy the euros. Then I have other clients that, like with this, you sort of tell them these things can happen, watching out for your budget. But when the market's a little bit stagnant, people will think about it and sort of it has moved too much. They're not too worried maybe, and they think that they maybe have time. And then this happens, and then they start to panic. And then they say, Sarah, you were right. And in this case, I wish I wasn't right, but I am. So again, it's getting people to really think about this, because I tell people, I show graphs, and I say how the exchange rate movements can cost them more money, but sometimes people need to see it to believe it. And this is what's happening now, is that obviously the rates.
So Christina is asking,
what is your time frames?
Oh, Christina's asking if there are any fees for the services themselves.
Yeah. Okay. So it's completely free to open an account with us, and there's no obligation to use us. So please even just have a free consultation with us. The fees, like I explained before, this sort of wholesale principle, we make our money on the exchange rate. So there's no commissions, there's no transfer fees. It's just in the exchange rate. So it is transparent. So we're buying the same as the banks and financial institutions. And then it's the price that we sell it back to clients, very similar to how the banks make
your markup, right? It's the wholesale to retail idea. There's no additional fees. There's no additional cost to have the account. And where you make your money to be able to provide the service is through the markup between the wholesale euro that you bought and what you sell it back as quote unquote retail.
Exactly. And there's no tiered structure. So, if you do 1,000, you'll get one rate. If you do a million, you'll get another rate. We offer a fair to our clients that if you're doing a smaller amount, then you do a large amount, we'll give you a very good price for all of it.
So you just cut out. So I'm going to repeat what I think you heard. There's no tier.
So there's no tier, no tier structure. So we're not going to charge you more to do smaller amounts than we would on your larger amounts. We give you a good price for all your transfers.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted, the way it was breaking up, I was like, "Ooh, I don't know if that sounded right." So I just wanted to make sure. So right now in everybody's question, and this is where you get to put your wizard hat on and tell us, if you had to make an exchange today, would you hold? Do you think it's going to get better, or would you buy right away because you only are forecasting that there's still a lot of room for it to get worse?
Oh,
put the wizard hat on.
The wizarding hat on. I think the thing is it's people's time frames. What are your time frames to move or be buying euros? That's one thing to consider today. Because if you're doing research now for a move in about, I don't know, next year or 2 years, things could be a lot different. I mean, the things to sort of obviously bear in mind is that this is impacting not just Trump, but just America, but globally, global economies as well. And the fact that obviously Trump is putting pressure obviously on the Fed to cut interest rates, the fact that it's losing a little bit of its safe haven, which means it could weaken the US dollar further as well. So there is probably potential that we may see some more US dollar weakness. I know that I said that the ECB may cut interest rates in June, but again, that could be forecast in because that's what we're expecting. There's obviously reversals in the war that, again, that could help strengthen the euro a little bit as well. So I think maybe that we might see it get a little bit worse before we see it get better. And again, it really depends on your time frames, but that's what I would say.
So Terrence is asking, he's saying, according to the internet today, the US exchange rate is 1 to 88 cents. If he was exchanging a euro today, do you know what the Spartan rate is today?
Not off the top of my head, but we could certainly give him a price if he contacts us.
Okay. Okay. So it moves so much during the day. We've already finished our business day in Portugal and in England. So because it's almost 7:00 p.m. here, the market's closed. So everything is based now on tomorrow, correct? Everything is we're over here, we're in tomorrow when it comes to like all of the exchange numbers, if I'm understanding it correctly.
The US is still, it is a little bit sort of because the US market is still running. So then we can still see some movements.
And Otis wants to know, are the Spartan rates disclosed before the transaction occurs?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So we to do an exchange, it's on recorded telephone lines, so everyone's protected, and all the information will be given to you up front before you make a decision and say, yes, I'd like to go ahead with that.
Yeah. So it's all very documented because you're not going to make an exchange without permissions and without documentation. So Wanda's asking what interest rate for savings, and if you're referring to interest rates in Portugal for a savings account, they're lower on average than the United States. They vary as well, but that would be euros that were invested into some type of savings account, and it depends on everything, if it's short term, long term, what type of criteria you're using, your access. So they are typically, for just a basic savings account, much lower, around 1%. They're not, as high as they are in the US, 1.5. For just a very basic savings account. But there's so many variables there, Wanda, that it depends on if you want to hold it, what your short-term, long-term investment strategies are. There's a variety of ways to look at it. But a very basic savings account is very, very low. And in Portugal, you don't have very many options, if any, for interest-bearing, like checking debit accounts. So that's something that's a little different. It's very regulated here and very different, the way they incentivize people for depositing money. So Sarah, I know this has been a little tough with all of our technical challenges tonight. Is there anything else? So Christine is asking if there are money market accounts in Portugal. There are different accounts in Portugal, and I do want to be, and I'm not trying to be evasive, but we are really regulated on how much we can talk about investments. It's a very particular conversation that needs to be with a licensed investment specialist that specializes in Portugal. Cross borders investments, especially, you need to have someone that understands the implications of taxes, because Americans are taxed on citizenship. So you are taxed both in Portugal and the United States. We also have a lot of different variables on what you can invest in as a resident and not being a resident, and so on and so forth. So if you have investment questions when it comes to investing your money and exchanging it over here, Spartan FX is your go-to to have a conversation about your currency exchange and how to maximize that experience. And then we have partners at Portugal the Place. If you need a introduction to folks that can give you advice within your actual portfolio and what you are needing, we can certainly get you introduced to those folks, because they're specialists. And I will let you know that when it comes to investments and tax consultations, you will pay for those. They don't do full free consultations where they give you actual tax advice, because they're going to ask you for all of your tax information, your financial information, your portfolios. They will do a full deep dive into your personal financial situation. And then after they've done all that work, they'll do a consultation with you based on true and real information and numbers. So they will charge you for that, because they're doing a deep dive of work into your personal finances. It's well worth it. It's certainly something I would invest in to make sure you're set up for success. But just be prepared that when it comes to advice on investments and taxes, especially cross borders, you want to pay for the information that's accurate for your situation. The internet is a huge hodgepodge of mess, and you don't want to take one piece of advice and kind of think it applies to you, because you could easily miss an element that is going to make an impact. Yeah, I know, Brooke, it's a lot of information. It definitely feels like it's kind of fire hoses at you. The one thing is, for everyone out there considering moving to Portugal, in the process of moving to Portugal, or even already in Portugal, you need to have a good understanding of your own personal budget and your thresholds. The currency exchange is real, and you want to factor that into every budget. But some of these things you can bite off at different stages. Okay. It'd be really hard to be deep diving into investments in Portugal right now if you're not even sure if you're ready to move. So, really taking this one step at a time. And one of the things, you do have some time from when you decide to move to Portugal to actually getting the details going, because you're not a tax resident in Portugal till your residency card has actually been issued. So the first appointment in the United States for your visa is not when you become a resident. It's not until you've had your second appointment in Portugal that clock starts ticking. So that gives you a pretty good time to get everything sorted out. And then you also have some time to move those investments after you become a resident to comply with the tax requirements. So don't panic that you have to figure all this out from day one. But currency exchange, and Sarah and her team at Spartan FX have great resources to help you really learn your way through this. So please reach out to Spartan FX. We have the information. We can do a introduction for you. They're there to work with you and help you through this process. And the one thing I would advise is, if you are moving right now, and if you are in the process of moving right now, this should be a priority. If you need to get your funded bank account for your visa appointment, if you're buying or renting a property and need to make deposits, this should be a priority. Get your currency worked out. Sarah, any final words before we jump off for the long weekend here? We have a 3-day weekend in Portugal, national holiday tomorrow.
Well, I couldn't have said it better myself, really, but exactly what you said. People, unfortunately, do this the last minute because the lawyer tells them they need to make a payment. You say, right, you need to make this payment, deposit for your property. Right, let me do that now. It's because you're following sort of processes, and there's lots to think about. But again, it's just about, please do think about this in advance. Get that preparation of understanding where your money is, what's the process for moving that money, what happens if you, as I said, are then in Portugal, what do you need to put in place? Is that a form? Is that, some banks as an international card reader, which you can get in branch. So again, it's sort of understanding that and that sort of planning to make that process easier. And as we said, factoring in the exchange rate, because unfortunately it can make a big difference.
It absolutely can. Thank you so much to being here today, Sarah. Again, what a bummer that we had a little bit of a technical challenge, but you handled it like a champ. And tomorrow, for everyone that's on here, is a national holiday in Portugal. It's Freedom Day. I have to say, this is a really, really important day. I think we all should take a moment and really think about what Portugal did 51 years ago, April 25th, 1974, with the Carnation Revolution, and throwing off the burden of the dictatorship and becoming this free and open country that we have today. So we feel so grateful to be in Portugal. I know that, speaking for myself and Clyde, we are, as a family, just so grateful to be in this beautiful country. And Sarah, your 1-year anniversary is coming up, correct?
Yes, next month. I've been here for 12 months, and it's the best decision that I've ever made. So if anyone has any questions about my journey, or as I said, I live between Cascais and Lisbon, I'm more than happy to have a chat, or if you're here, a coffee or whatever.
That's fantastic. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to helping you through your journey to Portugal. And if you have any questions, want to reach out to Spartan FX, or need to get connected, just drop us a line and we would be happy to get you connected. And then this whole webinar will be recorded and shared out to everyone, so you can move backwards into the conversation to kind of untangle anything that might have been confusing. Thanks again to everyone. Thank you, Judy. And you all have a fantastic weekend. Bye now. Bye-bye.